Kaitlin, I'm excited to have you here today, and for the people watching this too that don't know you, I want to start by saying you are one of my heroes. I tell you this all the time and you tell me you're no hero, but you are one of my heroes because I'm growing up in law enforcement, working with military, special forces, Navy SEALs, you name it. I've met some incredible American war heroes, but for what we do at Armored One, you're one of my heroes because you saved lives 10 years ago now. It's crazy to me that the 10-year anniversary of the Sandy Hook Elementary attack was 10 years ago, and I learned about you watching TV in my living room that night as the news came on. And back 10 years ago, I was working for the police and doing SWAT, training police officers on active shooter, how to respond to a school, how to take out a threat, stop a threat as quick as possible to save lives. Because of course, law enforcement has been aware since 1999 at Columbine that this is a problem, but they haven't been addressing it right. And watching you that night is the reason, one of the reasons Armored One exists was because of me watching you and the story that you shared on the news. I think it was Diane Sawyer, am I right?
It was.
That you, the night of the shooting, you shared that story, and we're going to share some of it today with them a little bit, but I wanted to talk to you about what you've been doing since, and your family, and your not-for-profit on what you're doing, even your book. So, but you are one of my heroes. You saved 15 kids in your classroom that day by thinking fast, being calm, and fighting through probably, I pray, the hardest situation you ever have in your life. So I'm glad you're here and you're finally at Armored One, and you get to see what we've developed over 10 years here in this Armored One headquarters in Syracuse, New York. So welcome here, and I'm glad you're with us.
Thanks, Tom. You know, hero is not a word that I relate to in any way. You know, I firmly believe 10 years later that I did what any teacher would do, right? I mean, you're a teacher, you go into teaching because you want to help kids, right? In any way possible. And they're your responsibility, those 8 hours that they're with you, or 7 hours in that day. And so on that day, what arose was terror, right? And imminent danger, and so my job very quickly turned to taking care of them. And I really, you know, I think that's what any teacher would have done in that moment.
I really believe too that a lot of teachers would, but now over 10 years of doing this and studying over 40 years of this, not every teacher and school staff member has acted the same, and with the same bravery and with the same speed of response, I guess we could say too, that you did.
Well, you know the definition of bravery.
What is it?
Acting in the face of fear.
So you're a teacher all the time, right?
Courage, bravery, they're pretty similar,
close.
Though. Yeah, but people will say that to me all the time, you know, you're so courageous. And I'm like, well, do you know the definition? At least my definition, the one that I've coined. It's acting in the face of fear. It's being afraid and doing it anyway, right?
Yep.
That's real courage, right?
Absolutely.
Like you're terrified, but you do it anyway.
Yes, definitely.
You know, like I'm scared to death of things all the time in my daily life, but you do it anyway, because where's it going to get you? Where is letting the fear hold you back going to? Oh, I agree. Going to bring you nowhere.
That's the same. I was actually talking with some of my older kids, the ones in their 20s now, about it, and they had friends with them, and one of the friends had said, "Your dad's really brave," as we're talking some police stories. I said, "Boys, I wasn't brave." I said, what it was just pushing through the fear. And part of it too was knowing that, could I really live with the decision that I made if I didn't do what I was supposed to be doing at that point? And I think that's same for you too, of I know how much you love not only your students in that class that year, but now with your classes for classes that we'll talk about later, you're not for profit, that you love the students across America, across the world, that you've even tried to help and make a difference with. So I think that instinctive, it was before you were a mom, but that mom was in you with those children before, and that bravery and that courage pushed through in that shining moment. You know, tragedy and shining moment, and I say that because the parents of those kids in that room, I'm sure, are forever grateful for the decision that you made, the actions that you made, and the bravery that you showed. So, but I do.
They have shared many of them have shared their gratitude, which now, being a mom is, you know, I understood it back then. I really did. I was 29 at the time of the shooting.
It's crazy.
And when they would reach out and they would, you know, send me an email or they'd send me a handwritten note, I really understood the gravity of it, even then, even not having kids, because I knew how much was lost on that day. Oh. And I knew how close we had come to losing our lives. So it was really an awareness of, you know, like, we do need to be so appreciative that the 16 of us are here, right? And I understand that sentiment. I understand the sentiment of like, I'm, so thankful that you and my child are here. But certainly, I think being a mom, it is, makes it even larger than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just the
probably brings you back to, about 5 years later, you become a mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of brings you back to the realization of what really went on for those parents
mm-hmm.
that day, and really what a difference that you were able to make by saving lives. And I want to share, and I know some of it's hard to talk about, and we've talked about it many times before, and you've helped us at Armored One and at One Training for teaching schools and helping them, and you really are my favorite training for schools out there, because, well, it really does, peer-to-peer, having those teachers hear your story from you. But what I love too is that, people love to say you need to move on, right? Mm-hmm. And what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things I learned very early on in my healing journey, right, was that, and it was probably within the first month, I mean, not that I could clearly articulate it, but in my mind thinking back, it was very early on, I realized a huge difference. For me, every single day of my life since December 14th, 2012, I will move forward from that day.
Yep.
But I will never move on, right? Like, I lived through this thing that wholly became a part of me. It's every second of every minute of every single day. That's why I come and I talk to you. That's why I started classes. That's why I wrote a book. That's why I go out and I share my story, because it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
And I think that that's the same for every person who has lived through a trauma or a tragedy, which, let's be honest, is most of us.
Yep.
Small or big, right? And everywhere in between, small or large, everywhere in between. But our society does a really poor job with this, right? We say things to people like, it's been 10 years, you must be feeling so much better. You've gone to therapy, you're doing yoga, oh, you started taking anxiety med, like, oh, you're over it, right? You've moved on. And it's so insensitive. And I think that, I know that I'm not the only one who feels this way.
Yep.
I don't think people talk about it, right? We're expected to sort of move on, right?
Yep.
Something happened and you pick up the pieces and you move on. And people say really insensitive things like, everything happens for a reason.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Nope. There's absolutely not one reason in the entire universe that could explain what happened on that day at our school. Not one. So, I think we just need to do a better job as a whole, right? As a society, of helping people to understand, A, that you're not alone once you've lived through something really hard, right? Yep. That everybody does on some scale, that you're wholly allowed to have the feelings that you're feeling, and that if they haven't gone anywhere in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, that's okay too, right? You learn to live with it in a new way, right? Like, you don't lay down and eat bonbons the rest of your life, but you move forward with a different purpose, a renewed purpose, a new way of seeing the world. And I think we need to do a much better job at that.
I agree. And I really think too that the world, the media, has done a bad job of we move on. And I was grateful that you and I were friends prior to my brother dying at 40 years old, 6 years ago now. And people within weeks saying, you've moved on, you can get back to work, you can. And I loved it because that was one of the staples in my brain from going to so many shootings now. I just hit that shooting down in Newport News, Virginia, which I know you don't follow too many because it's traumatic, but a 6-year-old shot his teacher intentionally.
I did see that.
And I responded up there, went up to the scene. That was my 60th in 10 years, 60th school shooting that I've been to, and we're barely touching them too. And I go to a majority of the major ones, but this one being such a young kid and child that was the suspect, that I went to it. But going to those and hearing people saying, move on, there's trauma I live with from being at these scenes, going to Sandy Hook within a couple days of the shooting and talking to people and seeing how hurt they are. And then when my brother passes away, people saying it's a year anniversary. You've moved on from this. There is no moving on. There's definitely moving forward, and you're always carrying it, and there's nothing wrong with carrying it. And I agree with you too. There is no reason. I always say to people when they say, what's the reason behind active shooter and school shootings? The active shooter 100% is pure evil. Whether you believe in God or not, you can't explain what went on at your school, what went on at Parkland, in Uvalde, at these schools. It's a pure evil trying to ruin us. So, even if we rewind before Sandy Hook, why did you want to be a teacher?
Oh, we're going way back.
Going way back.
We're going way back. I don't want to say I always knew, but from a very early age, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. Let's call it 5. And so, I did what all kids do. For me, the acting out was all these stuffed animals, and I'd pile them all around, and I had a whiteboard hung on the wall, and I'd, teach them words and, model myself after my teachers in school, in kindergarten and first grade. I think as all teachers, you have the teachers who inspired you. Mm-hmm. And I certainly had that. I would say definitely 3 teachers really stand out in my mind. I'll share briefly about one of the 3. And it's interesting because one was in elementary school, one was in high school, and one was at the college level. So it's kind of interesting how that, and obviously by college I had firmly decided, but definitely my teacher in elementary and high school played this real pivotal role in really solidifying that, yes, I want to be a teacher. Oh, yeah. So my 5th grade teacher was Mrs. Bollier, and she was really the teacher who just ignited that fire under me, who made me say in 5th grade, yes, I've known since 5 that I really want to be a teacher, but nope, now it's 100%. She inspired, mm-hmm. She motivated, and I think what was most important was that she made it look so effortless, so seamless, right? She built this really caring community within her classroom where everyone felt safe and welcome and really a part of her team, we were all on her team. And I think the most important thing about her was that, obviously she taught us academics and she read us incredible literature and she did all of that, but she genuinely cared about us, and you could feel that in the way that if you had a conversation with her, and in 5th grade is kind of a hard year, right? You're about to go to middle school, mm-hmm. It's sort of, people are starting to be mean, which doesn't really happen before 5th grade. Anywho, I transgressed, but she really got to know you in the way that you'd have a conversation with her, and she'd come back over a week later and she'd kneel down with you and she'd say, I've really been thinking a lot about X, Y, and Z, and here's what I think you should do. She genuinely cared. I remember at the beginning of the year, one of our very first assignments was we had to make a me box. And so we had to fill a shoebox with, full of items that explain who we are as an individual. It was, I still remember to this day because it was the absolute, probably one of the best moments in my entire educational career, because somebody actually cared about who I was and wanted to know about me and wanted me to share it with my peers. Yep. I still remember the feeling of sharing that box, and I kept everything in there the whole year, at my house. It was just
almost like your first time teaching, because you're sharing it and teaching,
sharing
me. With the class, right?
Yeah, but it was more like she cared about me, and I knew that she cared about everyone else, right? Because she was taking time out of her instructional time to say, no, we're going to spend, the next week, every morning, half an hour a morning for 4 kids to share their me boxes. So she, and we're still friendly. We're friends on Instagram.
That's awesome.
She now has, I hate misquoting things. I think she has MS. She's confined to a wheelchair. Oh. And has no use of her arms or her legs. Oh. But we get together, Graceland's, my daughter has met her a few times, and we'll have a bite to eat and just chat. And so I think I think that speaks volumes about educators, right?
So,
she was my 5th grade teacher.
Well, that's
I'm
the
going to
thing,
be 40.
being so young, and
old.
That you're still tied to her, that how much it meant to you and your driving force of teaching. Yeah. That is amazing. And
there's a chapter in Choosing Hope called Mrs. Is it Mrs. Bollier or Mrs. B? Regardless, it's all about her.
It was Mrs. B. I've read the book a couple times, and
I actually think it's Mrs. Bollier, and I spelled her name wrong. I think I spelled her name wrong. Because at the time we weren't in touch.
The next print,
it's a French name, and it's there's a lot of E-A-U's anyway, so yeah.
We're going to pause real quick.
So Kaitlin, going into December 14th of 2012, you've been a teacher for how long at this point?
So I had taught at Sandy Hook. It was my 6th year at Sandy Hook, my 7th year overall teaching.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you're very familiar by then, 6 years at one school. Mm-hmm. You're very familiar. I mean, you've had kids go all the way through the school and they're out by then, right? So recycled, brand new kids. Mm-hmm. So I'd say you're pretty seasoned by that point. Even though you were so young, you're pretty seasoned at teaching. Yeah. And your teaching that day, was there anything off? I mean, from the time you got up to what happened, was there anything special, different about that day, something that felt off to you?
Nothing felt off. No, I woke up, I would say it was probably a more joyous day, which is, right, what is that, a juxtaposition where two things are so polarly opposite, right? So I woke up that morning, it was a Friday. It was like 10 days before Christmas, which my family and I celebrate Christmas. We were heading out, my mom and I were heading out to look at wedding stuff that weekend. So
You were
Saturday,
engaged, yeah.
Yep, I was newly engaged, well, 4 months engaged. So it was, I just felt like on top of the world, right? Like I got my wedding dress, I'm getting ready for the holidays with my family. I'm just feeling
Vacation's coming
happy.
soon. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to, the reading specialist was coming to my room that day, which is a really big deal, right? To see how you're running centers and how you're running reading groups and are all the kids engaged. So I'd been, prepping them for, it's a big deal. I've been prepping my kids for like a week for that, really getting them ready. And she was supposed to come in at about 9:40.
Okay.
And so I was getting ready to leave my house. It was around 7 a.m. just prior, and I looked out. We lived on the water, Long Island Sound, and I looked out, and the sun was rising, and I put down my stuff, and I got my phone. BlackBerry didn't really take very good pictures. And I took a picture, and I posted it to Facebook, and I rushed out the door. And 3 hours later, everything was different.
So it's that beautiful of a morning that you actually stop what you're doing to take a picture.
And post it on Facebook.
So you get into work, and some of the people watching or listening might have heard you say too, I was the first classroom, right? But what does that mean? You come into the main entrance of the school, and you say you're the first classroom. Is there one hallway or two hallways? How did it work?
I can explain it. So I arrived at school that morning about 8 o'clock. My students would be arriving an hour later at 9. So when you walked in the front door of our school, so we had 2 large glass doors, and then we had a large wall of windows. And so when you walked through the front doors, there was another set of doors. So we had 2 sets of locked doors.
Yep.
So you walk through both, and then you'd come to the end of like a 5-foot brick wall, not long at all,
Yep.
and you would take that left, the hallway here. There was a hallway over here, but you would take that first left, and my classroom was the first door. So my classroom's door was, 12 feet from the front door.
And the offices were right there too,
The office
right?
was right in front. So it wasn't even, it was just right
this
there.
is your main entrance. And what they're seeing a lot now, and I would say Sandy Hook was ahead of the swing for a controlled vestibule, a secure vestibule, or what they felt was secure,
Very.
With what we do with glass, they're under the assumption that glass is going to protect you, but it's for rule followers. And sadly, they didn't know it at that time, but they're feeling safe. They almost have.
I think, can I just, because I think it's a good time
Definitely.
to say this. So I think there's this huge misconception. I know there is. I don't know how large it goes, but there's a big misconception that Sandy Hook was this laissez-faire, idyllic school in the countryside, and our doors were unlocked, and we were like, oh, come on in, welcome. No, that was not Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook was always locked. We had, right next to the first locked front door, we had video surveillance, voice recognition. You were not getting through there unless one of the 3 secretaries knew who you were,
Yep.
right? Or you were showing your ID and explaining to them who you were,
Yep.
and then they had to buzz you in.
Correct. I
The
remember that.
individual went away from that area and shot his way through a window and climbed through, which
Yep.
is the only reason, by the way, that I'm here today. Because I heard him shooting his way through that window, which
Yep.
took him about 2.5 minutes from what I'm told. You would probably know. And he went back, got more whatever, and then he climbed through. So I probably had 3 minutes, and in that 3 minutes, that's when we hid.
Yep.
He would have been in my classroom,
Yep.
and I would have had nothing.
Because he engaged victims too in that lobby area.
He did, but that
Just
was
outside,
that wouldn't have
which was-
given me the time
right.
to hide.
And you too, you're that first classroom that's just beyond. And what's crazy now, so I told you 60 shootings that I've investigated, been on the grounds, talked to people that were there, and they immediately say too that I thought it was fireworks. I thought it was a car backfiring. I thought they were doing construction. And when we asked them too, has anyone ever set off fireworks at the school during the day? Why would you think it's fireworks? It's now 2023. But even back then in 2010, we've had plenty of shootings since Columbine, even going before that, Jonesboro, Arkansas, at the elementary school. So you hear gunshots, and I tell you this because right now, teachers, school staff members, their brain is protecting them. They're trying to justify what they're hearing and what's going on. But you hear loud noises, and what does your brain say? Is it a gunshot? Is it not a gunshot?
Well, I think, my experience, and I'm always very candid about this, my students and my experience was very, very different. So Sandy Hook was this enormous school, the footprint. When I first started teaching there were 800 kids, K4.
Wow.
7 sections of each grade. This is a massive school.
Yep.
my proximity enabled me to know what it is, as well as my dad being a proud gun owner, like,
Yep.
you know, hearing the gun range. So I know what a gun sounds like. And I lived through Columbine as a high school student in Connecticut, right? Removed, but understanding I'm in high school, this is happening in high school. It was like etched in my brain, terrifying. So the first thing I thought when I heard, you know, I can't claim that it was the first shot fired, but, you know, as I'm hearing the shots, I know exactly. And I thought, Columbine's happening here. How could that be possible? How could that be possible?
And I give you a lot of credit for that, because I'm talking to hundreds of people where it's outside their hallway. It's right, and part of it is a denial too, a protection and a denial that it's not happening. And I was out of high school by the time Columbine happened, but that was such a big deal nationwide, and that really was like the media spread of what's going on with active shooter and shooting, that it made such a impression in your mind and in your soul almost back then, that it was something that you always did not want to happen, that you were aware of. And that awareness is a big thing, because I think that helps with situational awareness of knowing what's going on around you, but then being able to then discern, is this going to hurt me or not hurt me? And it could be something as slippery ice outside and someone falling, or hearing gunshots all of a sudden. But you hear those gunshots, and what was your reaction? Well, first, what was your training?
I have to backtrack.
Okay,
we
I'm
can
good
talk
with
about training
backtracking.
too. Well, no, because you touched on something that I think is important to share more about.
All right.
So awareness, right? And my therapist helped me to see this. So I'd never gone to therapy, but clearly after December 14th, I needed a lot of help with many different things.
Oh, yeah.
And so I started seeing a therapist. My fiance at the time came with me because I couldn't go anywhere alone. And one of the things she pointed out to me was that I have been this, she calls it hypervigilant, but awareness, kind of the same thing. I have been a hypervigilant person my entire life. I have always lived my life thinking that the worst possible thing is going to happen, and until December 14th, it never had, right? So I'm the person who, although fiercely independent, I'll go into New York City and I'll get a weird feeling about the cab driver, and I get out.
Yep.
I'm driving my car, and instead of going behind the car, I park 8 feet behind it, so that if that person got out to hurt me, I could easily pull around. I go into a restaurant, a movie theater, or wherever, and I know I'm facing the exit, so I know who's coming in and out. Then she pointed that out. Then I started doing work with lots of different first responders and military and police officers, firefighters, and they all said to me, "Well, those are things that we do. Like you're just innately doing that." And I think it stems back to being adopted. That was the other thing that my therapist tied it to, because when you're adopted, for the first however long, maybe it's your whole life, I don't know, but I think, the first few months, you're constantly looking and aware of where your mother is, her voice, and she's not there. And so you're trying to make sense of that, and so it causes a lot of adoptees to have this hyper vigilance. So I'm like, I've been thinking the worst possible thing's gonna happen my whole life, and now I just actually lived through it.
One of my good friends is adopted, and one of the fears he had for years and years was that all of this happiness is going to end. And where you were just saying too, you felt like something bad was going to happen. I wonder too, with that, the adopted kid, this is too good to be true, that it can't be this perfect, it can't be this good. And he too was looking for something bad, being aware of it, I say, but you're describing situational awareness, which is excellent, because you're absolutely describing it. And the level that you took it to, I would say post-shooting, working with so many law enforcement, and I know you worked with FBI, I mean, you've met people from all over. That's called combat mindset. What we train in the police academy is situational awareness of knowing what's going on around you and taking that, discerning it. And then from there, a combat mindset of something bad can happen, what am I going to do it? And what's great is you almost had that combat mindset when these gunshots went off, because I remember you saying, I think you were reading a story that morning, right? And you were opposite side, and I'll let you tell it way better than me, but you're not near your keys. Just some questions for you to touch on as you tell it, but what did they train you for active shooter? What was your lockdown looking like? Were your doors locked and closed during the day? Were you allowed to lock your door? What did they have for policies and stuff? Because I want to talk about the changes that have happened in 13 years now, or 10 years since that, but when it went on.
Yeah, I would say Sandy Hook was ahead of the curve, looking back to 2012. I would say that Sandy Hook took school safety very, very seriously. We did lots of different drills, but specifically we did 2 lockdown drills, fall and spring, every year from the time I started. So I had done, 12 by the time December 14th had happened. Our lockdown drill was to close our door, to lock it, which you needed a key to do that. So that's a little tricky.
In the hallway or in your room?
In the room.
Okay.
No, in the hallway.
So you had to walk out, which is a lot of...
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't want to lie.
Still a lot of classrooms, though, in America, you have to walk into the hallway with a key
I know you needed
to lock
the key,
it and close it.
but I don't remember from which side.
And I
to be
remember,
honest
because I
with you.
remember your keys were on the desk.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't remember which side,
Okay.
but it had to be locked with a key, which is a problem.
Yep.
We were instructed, so every classroom door had a circle window at the top, about maybe 2 feet.
From the top? Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so we were instructed to cover that with a large piece of construction paper. That was part of the lockdown drill. And then we were to go in front of our cubby area, which was kind of right in from the door, not far at all, and to have the students crouch down on their hands and knees, bracing their heads. We would have been sitting ducks. It would have done absolutely nothing for us. The one saving grace, I will say, is that being a first grade teacher and being very busy, I had put a blue piece of construction paper over the door during our fall lockdown drill, and I'd never gotten around to taking it off.
That's good.
So it was there.
Yeah.
So, do I still believe that he came into our classroom? I do. I cannot imagine, because the door was unlocked, I can't imagine that he bypassed classroom 1 just to go to 2 and 3. It doesn't make sense.
I actually talked to quite a few of the cops out there, and every one of them agreed that they think that he at least
The door was open.
looked into your room.
Correct.
Right.
And I had closed it for sure.
Yep. So
either he opened it or someone else.
Yep. And they believe that he popped his head in there, at least looked. And the way that you position that you're going to describe here about positioning that bookcase in front of the bathroom door.
Which was terrifying.
One of the cops that I talked to said he actually looked in the room quick when they were doing the fast sweep, didn't see any students, and didn't even see that door. So he assumed that there was no one there. And you probably didn't even hear them in the room at that point. But the thing is that it's crazy to think that your actions, all of it, even Sandy Hook, I will give them credit because they're way ahead of the curve, because there's a lot of schools that still will not do what Sandy Hook did back then, and it was still such a tragic event.
I don't think about that moment a lot of pulling that bookcase, because it was like a very last minute decision. And I was really terrified in making that decision, because all I kept thinking was, this is either going to save us or kill us. Because if the person knows this school, they'll know that I pulled it in front. And then we're in there.
As an expert, Kaitlin,
my
that
God.
does this,
We might need to take a break.
that's okay. As one of the experts on this, I will tell you those actions 100% saved your life and those kids. Because we even teach, we do not want people going into a dead end like a closet or a bathroom where there's no way out. And we say that because of even what happened at your school, but it's happened in a few, that we would rather them try to get out or barricade and have a way. And what you did is you hid them, you barricaded them, and you kept them quiet, which was absolutely amazing. And that what we tell people is using you as an example for 10 years now of, you're an example of why barricading is so important. This barricade hid the door and made it so that he didn't know it was there. It gave you another layer of protection. And I know the door was an in-swing door too that you stuffed these kids into. So you're in that room and you hear the gunshots and your kids are on the floor and you're reading.
So it was our morning meeting.
Morning meeting, that's what it was.
So morning meeting is a component of responsive classroom, which many schools partake in. Sandy Hook always, I think from the very first year I had taught there, bought into it full force, right? Like every classroom did responsive classroom. And it's really just a way of, and it's not simple, there's many components, but it's a community building tool.
Yep.
And one of the most important cornerstones is the morning meeting.
Yep.
And so morning meeting has different parts. And so every morning when my students were working on morning meeting, I would put on a song to signal that when the song's over, they need to be seated in morning meeting.
Yep.
And that was Oh What a Beautiful Morning. So we listen to Oh What a Beautiful Morning every morning. The song ends, they're all circled up, crisscross applesauce, hands in their bowl. And so we would first greet one another, and they would always choose what greeting that they wanted to do. They loved ball roll, that was their favorite. Then we would do our morning message, which was on our smart board, which would have been, like if I'm sitting here, it would have been right behind me. And I would have a student come up and help me with the morning message because there would be blanks, things that needed to be filled in, and so the students were all helped fill in. We would read through it together, talk about our day. That day, obviously, we were talking a lot about this visit, right? Like I remember just being like tunnel vision on like, we need to get through this and it needs to go well, and does everyone know what they need to be doing? And
you're a little bit of a perfectionist.
Just a small bit. Most teachers are. Not perfectionist, type A.
Yes, definitely type A.
And so after that, then we had share. And so my students that week were sharing about holiday traditions and what they were really looking forward to, what they were going to do with their families. And it was right, I think, my memory is it was in the midst of that, as they were sharing their holiday traditions.
And it had to have been loud because it's so close.
Loud. It was so loud, and it was just over and over and over. And so, again, so now when I look back and I can see where that individual parked the car, I know why. I had no idea because he was over there, right? And my windows didn't start. So I physically couldn't see the car, and I couldn't see him. Yep. Thank God. And so I heard it, and I got up, I closed the door, I turned the light off. I turned to my students and I said, we need to get in the bathroom, and we need to get in there right now, because there was no other choice. Like, I know what I'm hearing. I thought it was multiple people too, by the way. I did not think it was a lone gunman. I thought it was multiple guns, because it was so loud.
So many and so loud.
So loud. And so I turned to them and I said, we have to hide, because there was obviously if I thought running had been an option, I would have. But I knew we would have been either running towards him, or we would have been running with our backs down a very long hallway, and we would have been he would have, I don't know who this is. I don't know
that is
what their level
absolutely great decision. And we'll get a lot in training where teachers want specific answers to stuff. And we tell you've got to absorb what you're looking at and what's going on. And this is where an example too of, if you jumped out of the windows and headed out in the parking lot, there was a time where he was in the parking lot.
Which is when we would have been going
right.
out.
He's not going to kill you because you're only inside. He was looking to kill as many as he could.
Correct.
So not going that way was a great decision. And exactly, if you went out, you couldn't get out the closest exit, which was next to you.
Correct.
And you're down a shooting tunnel at that point. So you didn't have much of a choice.
And our windows didn't open.
What was going on.
They opened.
Yeah, but not enough to get out.
Correct. I could have probably shoved some of my tiniest students out through them. I could have never.
Maybe break a window to get it, but it's a lot, and it's
break a window.
Noise. Break
with
a nail
with like a book. I didn't have anything in my classroom to break. I don't know. So anyway, my students started not arguing, but like asking, like, what do you mean, Ms. Roig, right? Like, they're hearing it too, but they don't really comprehend obviously the way an adult does.
Right.
And I'm asking them to get into an impossibly small space. I mean, this is not the right shape because it's a circle, but our classroom bathroom was impossibly small. I mean, it was
3 by 5, right?
Not even, maybe 3 by 4, I would call it, with just a tiny, until that day, I had never stepped foot inside of it.
Well, as tall as you are too, it's not like it's a bathroom
because you couldn't use it comfortably as an adult. But that was, in that moment, the decision that I somehow in a split second made for us to attempt survival far outweighed how unreasonable it seemed for us. That was our only option. That was it. It was either we were getting in there and closing and locking that door, or, because I knew I didn't have time. I didn't want to take the time to get my keys off my desk, which was in the opposite.
You have no idea where he is, exactly.
Right, and I don't want to take that time. I have no idea what's going on. So we just all piled in, and at the very last second, as we were all in, after I realized that the door opened in.
So you put them in there before you even went in,
They
right?
just all everyone just started going in. So 2 of my students straddled where the flusher is. I think 2 of my students were standing on the toilet. They were like in the crevices next to it.
Wow.
And then I after they were all in and I figured out how to get their bodies behind the door to close it, I obviously was the last one in because I pulled the bookcase. And I remember, so I pulled the bookcase, because it was on wheels, so I'm not strong, it was on wheels. I pulled it, and I closed the door and I locked it, and I remember I was like standing with my body like against the door, but I remember leaning back against the wall, because it wasn't far. So I was like leaning over my kids, some of them.
And for people to even understand, your average elevator is probably more than double the size of the room.
Triple,
So imagine you, someone listening to this, getting into an elevator with a teacher and 15 students, and just a regular elevator, you would be uncomfortable and would never do it. Nonetheless, less than half the size.
After like 10 minutes had passed, like it really and again, obviously, like we're dealing with like a life and death situation, so I'm sure that like heightens your senses.
Oh, absolutely.
But I mean, I remember it being difficult to like take in a deep breath.
Yes.
Because it was like, we just have the air coming down the bottom,
The
and
room's
it's
heating up with the bodies, with the
and
breathing.
most of them, I had my fleece on. Students had their, because they had just come in. It's winter. I wasn't like the teacher who was like, take your fleece off, So it was like
Everyone's blood pressure's up, so their bodies are heating over. So yeah, I mean, you're in there, but it doesn't even end there. That's the thing is, all the shooting that was going on at the moment that you put the kids in there, that was just the beginning of this horrific event. And he then makes his way down your hallway. He chooses your hallway to come down. And as I said, talking to some of the cops there, they believe too that he went into the room, didn't see anything, and they want to move on quick. They want an easy target. They don't want to beat through a door, beat through a barricade. If you're not there, they know someone's there because school's going on, but where are they? And he moved on, and sadly you were close enough to everything that you could hear what was going on. And it was 2 rooms, correct, that he went and attacked in?
We had an adjoining door with classroom 2. So 1, 2, we had an adjoining door.
Did he go into that
3.
adjoining?
Don't know.
Okay. But he went across the hall from you, right? Is where he went and entered those classrooms.
No, I don't believe he did. The carnage was in the hallway right in front of my classroom. That's where our principal and our school psychologist lost their lives trying to stop him.
Yep.
And trying to tell him no. And then he, I believe, came into mine. And then he went into the second, I believe through the door, not through the adjoining door.
Yep.
And then he went into the third.
Yep.
Because that's where he killed himself.
Yep. And it's right there, right next to you. So
there were bullet casings over my floor, I was told.
And you could hear everything going on. I remember in our podcast too, a difficult one for me is one of the little boys that was the hero.
Yeah.
And
Jesse
there, and he hears gunshots and he knows that he's reloading.
In classroom 2.
Right? Do you remember what?
I don't remember. I just remember all I can remember people saying were, please no, please no. It's the only thing I remember. Like, oh God, please no.
I heard too that Jesse was the one that when he was reloading, he yelled, get out.
Yeah.
He's reloading, get out, this is a time or something.
Lost his life.
And he lost, and to me.
And the kids ran. They ran. And
to me, a first grader that's more concerned to save his friends than himself, like what an unbelievable, but
not understanding.
Yes, and then
not understanding how imminent that danger was. Like understanding, like run, go, but not having the wherewithal enough to understand of like, I need to go to, just too young, like that. Like what child should ever
process
have?
Exactly.
It's unimaginable. I mean, it's unimaginable.
And your kids too. You're hearing it, which means your students are hearing it.
So one little girl started to cry. Obviously, I can't believe they all did it.
I would have been crying.
And I just remember, I thought, no, this cannot happen because they're 6, right? And they lead by example and by modeling. So if one's crying and she keeps crying, they're all going to start crying. I grabbed her face in my hands and I said, show me your smile. Think really, because you can't be crying if you're smiling. Like, think happy thoughts. Think about your mom. Think about the holiday you're going to celebrate. Think about present. And she stopped crying. I mean, she was stoic and looked but she stopped crying and she just.
Because you wanted to keep them quiet.
They had to be quiet.
You did not want him to know where you were.
That was like the only thing we had. Everything else was unknown. But if we could be quiet, I felt like maybe we had a chance. I've told you before, I didn't think we had a chance. I did not, for 1 second, think we were walking out of that building, which is why for a really long time after I had a very hard time. I mean, I still have a very hard time.
Yeah.
You see my anxiety. I mean, I still have a very hard time, but because it was so unimaginable, A, that we actually fit in that space, and being the first classroom that he didn't find us. Unimaginable.
Yep. Being a Christian, I believe God was looking out for you guys, and somehow you guys were protected with that too. And to me, it was amazing because I remember too, our first few times even talking, you would share, I would ask you, always wanting to learn what can we do to make our schools safer. And I remember you saying too that the kids were starting to get the emotional roller coaster in that room. It's dark, right?
It was, no, we had the light on.
Yeah, the light on.
I didn't turn the light off.
So
I should have.
It's scary. The room is scary. It's small. They're hearing what you're hearing, the gunshots, people dying. And their little brains are trying to process it, and you're keeping them quiet. And I remember one little boy told you something that
Yeah,
I think you know what one I'm talking about.
He said, and it was such his personality. I mean, a first grade boy, sort of not to be typical, but they're boisterous and they're full of energy
Yes,
for the
they
most
totally
part.
are.
I mean, that's kind of just the experience of my 7 years teaching first grade. But this one boy in particular was just very, and he said, whispered, Miss Roig, I go to karate every week and I do a really good job while I'm there. And I think I could be very helpful with the bad guy out there. Can you let me out?
Getting you out.
But similar to the little boy
Oh,
in classroom too, right? Like wanting to be, I don't want to use the word hero because I don't like that word either, but like wanting to help.
Wanting to help. Yes.
Wanting to help.
And I take it too. That kid's a little badass. He must have been a purple belt minimally to take on a grown adult with a gun. But you instilled something.
Yellow for a white.
Yellow belt?
Probably. I mean, just like.
You instilled in him, though, bravery. And this, too, is what we try to teach to school staff, is that you could be facing the worst moment, but those kids are looking to you to see what you are doing. Yeah. If you went into that room, you broke down, you cried, the kids would have mimicked and done what you did, 100%. But instead, you're empowering them and pushing them that we're going to get home for Christmas. Correct. And I remember you saying, I didn't even truly believe that we were going to get out of here.
No, not at all.
But you're putting on the face of bravery. You're telling them, convincing them so that they're quiet, and not only quiet, but to the point of, I will fight to get us out of here. To me, that is an incredible statement to teachers, to school staff, that we want you to understand that your leadership in these tragic times, and it could be a kid chokes and dies or has a heart attack and dies at school, but the way that you are leading those students and those kids at that moment, whether you're a custodian, a bus driver, It doesn't matter, that they're looking up to you as that adult and the person that's going to protect them, whether they're seniors in high school or they're in kindergarten or first grade, and you did it. How long were you in that bathroom with it barricaded and keeping them quiet?
Yeah, I don't wear a watch. I didn't have a watch. I didn't have my phone. I still to this day have never recovered my phone. I can only imagine that someone grabbed it because it was right next to the door trying to look for help.
Yep.
And it became part of the crime scene. I didn't ask. I did not want it back. But so we were in there about 45 minutes.
Wow.
An eternity. We were the last class people rescued and found from the school.
And when they came to, it's not like a school administrator came in and said, okay, this is over, you guys can come out. What happened, and who showed up at your door? And
yeah, well, so they had moved the bookcase.
Yep.
So there's a knock on the actual door, and I was terrified because I thought, okay, that he's found us. Mm-hmm. Not to be, I just assumed it was a he.
Well, 99% of the time, 98%.
And so
right.
I whispered, I don't remember which student, but I said, ask who's there. And I believe it was a boy student, and he said, who is it? And they said, hey, little buddy, it's the police. We're here to help you. Please open the door. Please unlock the door. After my student asked who's there, and they said, hey, little fella, it's the police. We're here to help you. I then spoke, and I said, if you're the police, we need your badge. Thinking like, okay, this will make me feel better, right? No,
I must have been let down, because when I got my first badge as a cop, I felt like it was fake. They
Totally.
handed it to me, and I'm like,
totally, and that's what
it?
I said. They slid it under. Of course, there's, I'm there, but there's students. So I think one of my students was able to sort of bend down and get it and hand it to me. And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm like, this is something this is not real. So now I'm like really nervous.
But I'm glad you were this defensive,
because I'm
though,
like,
still.
You're not really the police
Yep.
if this is your badge. This is like plastic. Which was probably really offensive.
But they do kind of feel it. They're cheap metal.
Yeah.
So
are they?
Yeah.
And then I said to them, if you have the keys, you need to figure out a way to open the door. And it was a pop lock, so it needed something to be pushed into it. And
it was pretty easy to get in.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And so the door popped open and pushed in, and we were greeted by an entire SWAT team,
I bet.
head to toe.
Too, just off the topic, I'm thinking too, my years of SWAT, you had badges that were sewn on your uniform. You didn't want extra stuff. You didn't want a badge in your pocket in a wallet because you need fast movement.
So they were scrambling.
So they were probably scrambling, calling someone on, get me a badge in here quick to get you a badge. And they're probably thinking as cops, because they don't work enough. Yeah. This part of the problem in the U.S. is that cops and the school districts don't work together enough to understand too. They're probably like, this crazy woman has these kids in there and doesn't believe we're the police, and there's a whole SWAT team. So they probably scrambled to get that for you, and you made them pop it. It's great to me.
I don't know, but I was told by a woman like 2 years after the tragedy, I was at a school in New Jersey speaking, and the woman came up to me after and she said, my husband's best friend led that SWAT team in.
Wow.
And he, to this day, has no words for the sight they saw because they thought they were rescuing the two of you.
That's amazing.
They thought they were rescuing me and the little boy who spoke. They had no clue.
I heard that through the police officers that yours
class.
Afterwards too. And I had seen you on the news, so I was aware of what was going on that night. But that when they said we went into Miss Roig's room at the time, you weren't married, right?
Yeah.
So Miss Roig's room, and there were 15 kids in this little bit. We never thought you could fit more than 5 in there. Nonetheless, a whole class, and they were amazed that they just kept, like a clown car, they kept coming out and coming out and coming out.
And it was, I remember they had to pull them at first. Because we were literally they were just pulling kids out, and then until we were kind of able to comfortably, because we were in there such a long time that we were squished.
How did they get you out of the building too? I mean,
we took a left. And so I held it together in the bathroom. I did. God knows how, but I did. Mm-hmm. But the second I saw them, police officers with their machine guns and their body armor.
You could let your emotions.
I just grabbed 2 of my kids' hands. I could not tell you which 2. I have absolutely no idea. And I was hysterical. And I just followed, we just ran out. I followed their direction, but I just kept asking them over and over and over and over, how do you know we're safe? How do you know whoever did this is gone? How do you, and obviously. Mm-hmm. But I'm but what if there's someone else?
I know.
How do you know? How do you know there's not someone else? And I remember running through the parking lot because we had to go to the firehouse, holding my 2 kids' hands and just looking in the bushes and looking behind cars.
Feeling there's someone somewhere.
Yeah, and I felt that way I still kind of feel that way, but you probably notice when I look and.
I've been with you enough. I know how you are, and
I feel that way still.
You're actually a lot like police officers. That combat mindset again that we talked about, the accelerated situational awareness. Cops are constantly not liking someone behind them, around them.
There was a guy following me on the highway today, and I was
he was probably head the same way.
No, I know, but I'm I need to get. So he finally went around me.
But that keeping the space at traffic lights, I've taught all my kids. I got 5 of my 6 kids driving now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You keep that one for car accidents, but anyone tries to rob you, jump in your car, you're able to pull away, and these are all things that have come from that. But your emotional release at that moment too. I've had quite a few where they keep it together, and this is what we try to stress again to the school districts, or even if you're at a church or a doctor's office, keeping that composure and fighting through what your body wants to do. That point of you knew it was safe to release and let go, 100% you should be crying and be hysterical, but you knew that you were safer, but you still didn't feel 100% safe.
No.
Because you've just been through such a traumatizing experience. And
they weren't really giving me answers.
Yes.
They were we just know you're safe. I'm but what do you mean?
Yep.
They're this is we're always safe. Great. Thanks for sticking us with her.
And
too, questions.
There is very limited information. If you're not on the front lines, they don't know other than the threat's been taken out, but they don't want to tell you that he's been shot or he's dead or killed himself.
Correct.
But even then, that wasn't going to satisfy you anyways. Even if they said he committed suicide, you're still thinking there's someone else.
His friend is coming. He told his friend to come at 10.
Mm-hmm. So,
but again, that's
But too, there is nothing wrong with that mindset as we look at Columbine, where there's multiple shooters and they're trying to draw people out. Jonesboro, Arkansas. Another one in Colorado just a few years ago where 2 attackers. So it's the right mindset. It's just very sad to know that the trauma that you and the kids are going through at that moment. You coming out of that too, I do want to talk about what's gone on for the past 10 years and what you've done, but a couple questions for you just to touch on. Have you stayed in touch with any of the families or the kids? And what did you want to do from that point on? I know you stayed with your students and eventually stopped working at the school district. And you've written a book. You've met the President of the United States. You've
3 of them.
Yeah, going through, and your life took a big turn at this moment. And I know you well enough that none of it was for fame, popularity, any of that.
God. Go back to December 13th in a heartbeat.
Yours was to protect the kids, love the kids, and make people aware of what's going on. And sadly, their country is still not aware enough. But what happened? So.
Which question?
After, I want you to touch on that as you tell the story too of what happened from there.
What happened from there? Okay, it's a long journey. Okay, so let me start here. So in the days and the weeks that followed December 14th, two things were very much at play. The first was that I was terrified of life, which was pretty, even though I had always been sort of afraid and anxious, it was a very foreign feeling, being terrified of life. I was always pretty independent, like a go-getter, you know, and so being terrified of life was new. Like not being able to leave my house, not being able to drive a car, just being like paralyzed with fear was a really infuriating foreign feeling. So that was one thing that was very much at play. The second thing was that I was desperately trying to answer this long list of questions that really all circled around why our school, why innocent lives, 20 of whom were first graders that my kids played with every single day, and many of whom were siblings of kids that former students, like why? And so eventually what I realized was that I couldn't continue down this path, right? I could not continue down a path where I was terrified of life, and I couldn't keep banging my head, metaphorically speaking, against a wall, trying to answer the long list of whys. I realized that I'm never going to answer those whys. Not then, not now, not ever. And that was a really powerful realization. I think for so many of us in life, when we are confronted with the hard stuff, which we all are on all different levels, we often spend so much time grappling with questions that we are never going to answer. And we let it lead us to frustration. And we forget in those moments that there are so many questions that can be answered, and that there's so much power to be found there, right? And so for myself, I realized, okay, I can't answer all of this, but there are two questions I absolutely can answer and that I need to. And I can't say that way back then it was articulated in my mind this way, but this is absolutely what happened. The two questions were, how do I make sure this day does not define us? Because at first that's what was happening, my students and I. How do we take our control back?
Because you didn't stop working.
No.
You said you could not leave the house alone, but that didn't mean that you abandoned your kids and didn't go back to work.
Yeah, my mom met me every morning. And I sat in my classroom every day, because I literally could not be alone. So God bless her for that. So the two questions. And so, so I have the questions, right? That's one component. And then the other component is, my God, I'm terrified of life, right? So how do I overcome that, right? Like, I don't want to be terrified of life forever, of all the parts of life. And so those two questions were the way. Like, I didn't know the path, but I knew that if I answered this not controlling us and this not defining us, well, then I'm not terrified, right?
I agree.
So I set out to answer these two questions, having no idea how, and we go back to school. So our superintendent at the time wanted us to go back to school on Tuesday morning. Now, for clarity, the tragedy happened Friday morning, so we have a weekend, Saturday, Sunday, like we would have always had. And she, in a meeting, told us she was going to give us Monday to grieve.
So
Sorry, I just it's unreal.
I love it. I love it that you're pointing it out, because
it needs to be pointed out.
They become like robots of, we have a job to do, we don't get state money if we're not teaching, we're not, and we see this nationwide. But let's look at just less than a month ago, an NFL football game where the Buffalo Bills guy gets hit so hard. Whatever happened, he has a heart attack on the field.
And they did the right thing.
And they end the game.
As they should have.
As they absolutely should have. And those are grown warrior men doing it. Lots of money. You see them crying on the sidelines, both sidelines crying for this guy. And here we have a tragedy in a school with these kids. And on Tuesday, 4 days from now, you're going to be back and be in school. What idiot thinks of that? I don't care if she hears it, but who thinks of that?
She actually had the audacity. She had the audacity right after saying we're going to give you Monday to grieve to actually right after that say, and if you would like to attend one of the 26 funerals, we'll work to get you a sub. Now, I don't know how that hits you, but as a person who came very close to losing my life in that building and thought that I was going to for 45 minutes, having her say that to me, to all of us, was just, it was a whole other trauma. Like, you don't appreciate or respect the lives lost. You don't appreciate or respect any of the lives sitting here now. You have absolutely no idea what you're doing here. And so I hope it could be a lesson. Well, I don't hope it could be a lesson, because I hope this absolutely never happens again. So I hope that it's not a lesson that anyone else has to go through. I mean, that is my true to God hope. I don't wish it on anyone ever, 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 ever. I hope that in hard times, right, that people in leadership positions do better, know better, do better, because
I agree. The
not
job is
okay.
never more important
Not
than
okay.
the person. No matter what career you're in and what's going on, the people are more important, and especially when it comes to kids, because, you know, for years through my police career, through being a father, always tried to justify Columbine of they're older, something must have been going, it must have been bullying, not that it's right or correct as in justifying, but that way of protecting that. I hope this doesn't happen to my kids when they're at school. And then when it happens at an elementary school, it's like there is no justice. So you circling that question that I agree will never be answered. It's just pure evil.
Correct.
Even with Parkland, where the shooter lives, he's still never going to give a real answer on what went on. He's just going to play games like he has. And you wanting to get that to move forward and get these kids to move forward, you're now back at school, and she's telling you Tuesday. Do you remember when you went back to?
Yeah.
And you didn't go back to that school building.
No. Well, that's the thing too. Where were
It's
we
evidence.
going? Where were we going? We went back to school, so teachers went back on January 2nd, kids came back on January 3rd.
That's
That
still
sounds
really
right.
fast.
Yep, and we went back to a school that was completely not ready for us. It was a school that had been closed down, abandoned for years. It was a 2-story, actually 3-story, but two stories were in use. Sandy Hook was a 1-floor building. My kids were, like me, shells of themselves, as understandably. I'm not
Absolutely.
saying that. I mean, it was a lot, right? And now we're in a building that we have a floor above us, and people are dragging furniture. And there's
Making
loud
noises,
noises,
oh.
and my kids I mean, I had one student especially who just would just rock. Like ball themselves up and just rock. So I mean, we were just trying to get through the day. I mean, forget like education and academics, and we were just like listening to Christmas music and coloring in January. I mean, to be honest with you. And then, you know, time passed. My mom was still coming with me, so she's there to, you know, because now we're in a classroom with no bathroom. My kids are very aware that we survived because of a bathroom, and they're asking me
gone.
constantly, what if a scary man comes here, Miss Roig? And they're looking around. And they ask me every day what we do. I had a little girl who could not return to school without her mom for over 2 months because I couldn't answer the question.
Right.
Wasn't gonna lie, like there's
you
no
gonna say?
answer.
Right.
Which I kept asking our superintendent to help me come up with an answer. And she said, this is the safest school in America. There's nothing to worry about. Like just so insensitive, like you don't get it. Like you're not understanding. Like my kids are 6 and they almost lost their lives and they want a simple question answered. They want a plan. They want to know at home with their parents, I know that no scary man is coming here, but they want to know that if a scary man does, well, do you know what she told their parents?
Right.
She told them Miss Roig saved them once, she'd do it again. That is like insane. That is like the most insane thing you could ever say to someone.
Wow.
Like this is like common sense. This is mental health. This is a little kid needs a plan. This is not like your adult. Know better, do better.
Yes.
I share it, know better, do better. Know better, do better.
It's almost like a political
I don't
position
care.
or
It's horrible.
leadership that
Horrible.
it does, but it needs to change, and it
Needs
needs
to
to be
change.
different, and it has continued where they don't shut down, they don't close, they, you know, a tragic event that they should never see. You know, less than 10% of our military sees combat. And I take that too, if that 10% of combat, how many of them have seen 20 dead kids at once? Like, what has gone on here is worse than many more war stories that I've heard and things that have gone on, and then it's
Back to normal.
back to normal, let's go. And,
Kids are resilient.
and a big part of it too, right, is they need this structure, they need this, they need that. They need to be loved and safe
Correct.
and with their families and all of that, just like you did, even at 29 years old, needing your mom. These kids needed their mothers and their fathers.
And most of them were there.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
our classroom door was like, come on in, take
Yeah.
a seat, wherever, you know, I mean, it was.
But you guys not only made it through that year, is that when you started kind of your not-for-profit, which is Classes for Classes?
So the idea was born in my classroom.
Yep.
Yep, and it
How
came from
did
a
that-
place. Yeah, it came from a place of. We were inundated in the most positive way with gifts. People from around the world wanted us to feel, not just my class, the community, wanted us to feel loved and supported and connected. And they did that by sending us stuff. I mean, boxes of things came in. I mean, every day I would say my kids were getting something, a Happy Meal party, Crumbs cupcakes, recess toys, electronics, stuffed animals, I mean, you name it.
You showed up.
And it was amazing because my kids were, you know, smiling and feeling joy, which was really important. I would say after about maybe 2 weeks of all these, you know, boxes arriving at our door in the morning and giving to my kids, giving, I stepped back and I realized that it needed to become a teachable moment. I could not sit back and allow my kids to just get and think that that's the way the world works, because it's not the way the world works.
Right.
You know, my parents raised me very much so that when you get, you give. When somebody does for you, you do for someone else, and you help however you can. And so I realized that this was a pay it forward lesson I needed to teach my kids. So it was, I don't remember what day of the week it was, but it was after lunch, before recess. I came back into the classroom, they sat down on the rug, and I put another box of recess toys. I started pulling items out. And they were so excited, and I said, this is, you know, these are for our classroom, for you to play with. Then I read on the smartboard a book called, I always pronounce her name wrong, Boxes for Katja. It's Katje. It's a little girl, I think she's in Russia.
Okay.
And it's a story about World War II, I believe, or World War I. I'm not a history buff, but anywho, her family is in a war-torn country and is supported throughout that time. And then when she gets to a place with her family where they're on the other side, they're then able to help someone else.
Wow.
So we read this book, and then we went back to talking about the gifts. And I said, why did somebody send this to us? And now we're on like day 10, right? So they're like used to it. Why are people sending us all these things? And their hands raised, and they said, well, they want us to feel loved. They want us to feel supported, right? And I said, absolutely. And then I posed sort of the trickier question. I said, what's our job now? Pay it forward is a lofty concept for a 6-year-old. Their hands raised, and they said, well, we should help someone. We should send a gift to someone else. We should make someone else feel happy. And I said, yes. And I was ready for recess, ready to like sit in my chair and just like, and yet the most amazing thing happened. Their hands all started to raise, and they said, well, who are we going to help? And how are we going to help them? And what are we going to send? You have to imagine that my kids, you know, not even a month prior to this moment, have lived through, or were living through, the worst, you know, evil darkness you ever could. And yet here they are in front of me feeling hopeful and excited and inspired about helping someone else, connecting with someone else. It was a true light bulb moment of, number one, here's the answer to both my questions.
That's awesome.
Right? Evil can't define you if you choose to focus on something else, and you absolutely get your control back when you help someone else.
I agree.
And so that's what we did. We reached out to a classroom in Tennessee, said, how can we help? What do you need? They said a Mimeo Teach, which is very similar to a smartboard, and we had also been mailed money, so we mailed them, you know, however much that was for them to buy that.
That's awesome.
That was
and
the beginning.
Were your kids able to connect with the kids in that class too?
Thank you cards.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, nothing crazy. Because again, this was like a tiny seed of an idea.
I remember, man, going back to kindergarten or first grade, where we sent a letter to, I forget what country, so another country over in Europe, and sent a letter, you know, I'm here in America, I'm in first grade, and telling them, you know, we put a piece of candy in there, Jolly Rancher or something, and sent it, and getting a thank you note back and hearing about that was like a massive deal. And all you did was give them a piece of candy.
Yeah, connecting.
And they sent something to us too, to thank us. So I can imagine too, these kids are through hell. Yeah. They're pushing forward. They're taking the baby steps, but they're coming up from a lesson that you taught, and what was heavy on your heart was, we need to do something from this where we can positively affect, compared to coming in and just making it through a day.
Right.
So
good and bad are both always present. It's a choice which to focus your energy on.
I agree.
So we made a choice.
And did you end up doing that basically throughout the school year? Because things...
So what happened, so we reached out, the class was in Tennessee. That class in Tennessee was then inspired, and they reached out to a classroom in Arizona. And after those sort of connections there, that's when I really got to thinking and organizing and saying, this is bigger than my class. This needs to be a website, obviously, because I can't be everywhere, right? So it needs to live online so everyone can access it. And somehow it came to me, well, it needs to be a nonprofit, because that was the only thing I could figure out for it.
Yep.
And so that's how it came to be.
And it started going. And you're still doing that to this day?
Yeah, we just launched our 7th website.
That's incredible.
We're completely focused now on, we consider ourselves a gallery for teachers to showcase how their students choose to be kind.
That's awesome.
And I will say, and this, hopefully, well, it's good tears for this one, not sad tears. I will say that almost every single time I go into a school, because I'll lead this mini lesson a lot when I get to actually go into schools and talk about how kindness is a choice and why are we going to choose to be kind and why do you choose to be kind. Almost always, when they write and illustrate about how they're going to choose to be kind and how that choice makes a difference, they write and illustrate about how it'll change the world.
That's nice.
Which, well, it's like more than nice, because it's like, you know, Classes for Classes ultimately was founded because what happened on that day was so full of hate. Like so much hate and anger and just horrible feelings, right? And so if we teach kids from 5 years old, 4 years old, that they're connected and that they don't have to be best friends, but that they care about one another, and that they care about, you know, another person's feelings and their well-being and, you know, all of that. God, I sincerely hope that if they're truly engaged in that from 5 throughout their educational career, that they don't have hateful feelings, right?
It
like
changes
how
the
do,
world.
you know, it does.
It does.
Well, it has the potential to, if we really buy into it. I think our country, unfortunately, you know, we don't do the best job at it.
I remember sitting down with one of our U.S. senators, one of the heads, U.S. senators that have been there for a long time, and he says, Tom, why do you think this keeps happening and getting worse? And I said, our children have lost respect, love, and caring about their fellow man.
There's so many reasons.
And we just see where society is falling apart, and instead of caring and looking out for, and you see it on TikToks now, you see it on these stitches or whatever it's
Social
called,
media.
where
Oh,
they're
it's so
videotaping
scary.
themselves coming up to the homeless guy and helping him. That's their way of being generous, compared to when no one's looking, what are you doing?
Going to a soup kitchen on a
And why do you
Saturday
do
all
it? Because
afternoon.
if that person that's thinking of harming themselves, harming someone else, can feel loved and feel purpose and feel cared for, that is going to make a big difference. It is. Because they're then going to care about somebody
100%.
and not want to hurt. And so I believe that is a big dynamic changer for us, and why I've always supported what you do and why you're doing it. And you know, to me, you even wrote a book too.
Choosing Hope.
Yep, that we will buy in bulk here, and then we give out. We give out too when we go out and teach. We give it to different staff members at school districts all over the nation, and it's a gift we love to give too, because you know, we went through some hard stuff with talking today, but it's not all. It is a powerful message about moving forward and having purpose and caring. And I imagine too, you might, like we have, we'll get flack from people of, you're doing this to get rich, you're doing this to be. There is no money in active shooter. It is a fight to do anything, and I know your heart well enough. There is none of that. And the
When
people
people
who
say something about you, it's none of your business. And people who talk about other people, it's a reflection of how they feel about themselves.
I agree
100%.
that they would do it to make money.
100%.
They would do it not. And truly, what I see in you is that your fight did
And
not
I've made
stop.
not one penny of royalties off Choosing Hope. So if anyone's
Listening and watching, yeah. And what I see
maybe
is
like
that your
very
fight
not-
did not stop
nothing crazy.
on December 14th
Yeah.
in that classroom, in that bathroom, running out of the building. Your fight didn't stop. Your fight has continued to make a difference. And you haven't stopped teaching. As in, you're not teaching in a classroom, but you continue to teach every year, all the time, teaching the teachers, teaching the staff, and even sometimes with students. You know, you're constantly fighting to make this difference that is just absolutely incredible. And to us, it's a motivator for me, for my team, for One Training and our team over there that's out working with schools. It's also One Training as a not-for-profit like you. It's not a moneymaker. If anything, there are a lot of donations come from this side of the company, the construction side of glass and film. And you know, something that I wanted to share with you, because of Sandy Hook and the attack, and your description too of him coming to those doors, that we do security assessments, we do training, and we do glass work. And I didn't know really anything about glass other than the Bearcat that I sat in SWAT had bullet-resistant glass that would stop probably a 50 cal, and that's all I knew. But my thought was, what can we do to protect the schools more? If there's this glass and film out there that can slow down a hurricane, there's got to be something. And as we looked into it, it was so expensive for schools, no one could afford it. Right. Our goal was to start and get those prices down to get them something that actually works and is made to stop someone with a gun. And we've successfully done that. You're sitting in our national headquarters.
It's beautiful.
And we took the price of glass and window films that were about $100 a square foot. It's 10 years later and inflation has been terrible, right? Horrible. This past 2 years. Horrible. And we are down in the $40 and $50 mark a square foot. And the competitors have to do it too because we've crippled them. They have to come up with a better product. They have to pass tests. And that came from, though, at Sandy Hook. And with that too, I share all of that because, you know, the great report that we had was a school in New York out near Rochester where your best friend lives was attacked about 5 years ago. And the attacker was kept at bay because the security assessment broke down what they needed and how they needed it. We ended up going in and putting, at the time, window film on their glass entries and their classroom doors and the fire doors there. And the attacker showed up tweeting that he's going to kill just out of a psych ward, high on cocaine, an expelled student. Very similar to what we saw down in Parkland. And we were able to keep him at bay for almost 8 minutes. No one was injured, no one was killed except for him, and that comes from me standing in front of the TV as a SWAT operator, a dad of 6, husband to a teacher, and looking at it and saying, something needs to be done. There is too much of a gap between schools and law enforcement. We've got to do this different. And because of all of those things, we were able to save lives that day. And we've had other schools where they've been close to attacks, and because they've been trained right, because they've had the situational awareness that this isn't right, we need to do something. Lives have been saved, people have been arrested, it's been cut off and stopped, and that is worth more than any money, anything you'll ever make, anything you'll ever do. And people are like, you're running multi-millions of dollars in work. I'm not a millionaire. It's not because I spend money. I make less than some of my employees, and not because I'm so humble, but if we're gonna keep our prices down, we're gonna continue to make a difference. This is how we have to run it and how we have to do it. Just like you with Classes for Classes. It's never been a money thing. You're not taking money for it in your fight for this. I mean, even today, driving out on a snowy day through New York.
It wasn't snowing until I got here.
So, but here you are making sacrifices away from your daughter, away from your husband, and with us because of your passion to continue to do this. And I don't see this stopping, even when you're old and gray. And when you pass away, that someone's going to carry on that torch.
When I'm old and gray?
Yes.
I think we've arrived there.
You're covering it well. So, and when I met you, I had a beautiful black beard, and now it's straight gray. So.
Well, better than the alternative.
Yeah. So, but I love that you are here. I love that you continue to fight, that you continue to tell people, and even when you're faced with opposition of the people who, your old superintendent, they're still out there.
Sure.
That we're safe, there's nothing to worry about, and there's some of the unsafest schools in our country, and there's a false sense of security with the staff because my superintendent said it or some police officer said it, we're the safest. They're not even close, and I know you've run into that opposition of, you need to make changes. This is what happened to me, and you're doing it here, and you fight that, and I love it.
Well, it's so important, you know, I mean, lived experience is the greatest teacher, right? And so, like, how do you not listen to the stories of people who have been there and gone through it and take their suggestions? Like, how do you just say no? You know, very closed-minded. Yeah. Unfortunately.
And hopefully you keep opening the minds, that teaching of. Yeah. You know, I don't want someone to learn that lesson that we did with our superintendent. I want them to see what happened.
I know. Well, I really try to, like with you, I talk about it because I think it really makes a lot of sense in the space where you're in of, you know, enacting real change in school safety, you know, in schools across, that Armored One is enacting across the United States. For me, I typically don't talk about it because for me, like, it's not my message. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to make schools. I mean, I know my own lived experience, but I don't like really know exactly what to do. You're the expert because you're law enforcement and you have that background and you can look at it and say, you know, this class and this here and, you know, this is what's going to make it safe. For me, you know, my teaching that I'm so passionate about is how to move forward from the hard stuff, right? Yep. Like, it's choosing hope, moving forward from life's darkest hours. Because what I realized very early on when I first started, you know, 10 years ago, going out and sharing my story, which I did at first with like such trepidation. Someone asked and I was like, what, they want Say they want me to talk for an hour? What am I going to say for an hour? And I went and I thought, oh my gosh, and I had prepared, I had been doing so much writing in my healing, and I got up on the stage and I spoke, and it was the Pennsylvania School Board Association, so it was all their superintendents. And I got down after, and the line forms people who want to say hello or share with you or whatever. And a few people back, and I'll never forget it, she said, I'm really glad that you're here today, but I'm more happy that my best friend is, and she's back in line. She was diagnosed with pretty severe cancer recently, and she really needed to hear your message. And I will tell you that 10 years later, and the reason that I still go out, and sometimes now it's virtual, but I'm still out speaking, is because every single time I've spoken, every single time, someone has shared their hard stuff, and it's like this great connector, right? And it's so important that we share our own hard stuff so that we know that we're not alone, and that person knows they're not alone, and that it's okay to be going through it, and that you can come out on the other side, and you can make a choice. So.
And I've personally witnessed it when you've come with one training and taught and seen the lines form and it's not all active shooter. There is that connection of peer-to-peer, you to other teachers and staff,
sure.
that it's a fear of theirs. And almost every one of them, I'm sure, have that worry and that fear. But when they come up to you and talk about cancer or their friend dying or their family member, all of that it's tragedy. And it is very hard to grab a hold of. And going way back to the beginning of our talk is when people come up to you and they say something dumb to you about what you've been through. It's been 6 months, you should be over this.
Must be getting easier.
Yes, they have not been through a major tragedy. They've had bad things happen, but they have not had a major tragedy yet. And it's ignorance because it hasn't been experienced. And I did that with my wife when her sister and her niece died. We're sitting next to the Elizabeth room, which is our conference room named after my niece on my wife's side, my 20-year-old niece who died in a car accident with her mom, which I know you know about. But people coming through, and I did not understand with my wife even how to talk to her and do that because I had grandparents die. They're supposed to die before you.
Very different.
But your brother dying at 40 in the middle of the night changed everything, and that's where your empathy, and because now you're in it together. We're all in this together on that, and that's really where you're speaking. Your book makes a difference that is way beyond schools and active shooter and secure, any of that stuff. It is truly about moving forward from tragedy, and you're going to have a tragedy in your life, and how you come through it makes you either stronger, weaker, or it crushes you. So
yeah,
it was great
100%.
talking with you. I love it.